after the webcast to ensure our presenters have optimal time to share their messages and answer questions. All listeners are encouraged to participate. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please invite your colleagues and contacts to join the Ensemble Network. Ensemble is free to join, diversity and inclusion network, where members receive alerts for future webinars as well as updates on exciting industry events. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ensemble Network webcast. Thank you to all our listeners who tuned in today. We are very excited to get this webcast underway and hear from our fantastic panel of guest speakers as they share their thoughts on recruiting and retaining women in engineering programs. My name is Jennifer Wright, Senior Director of Program Development for the Mining Industry Human Resources Council, and I'm excited to be here with you today to discuss such an important topic. As many of you know, MIR established its mandate to identify opportunity and ultimately address the HR and labour market challenges in the Canadian minerals and metals sector. The Canadian mining industry faces a significant challenge in establishing a sustainable supply of labour that is able to withstand mining's economic volatility. MIR, through its labour market intelligence, has identified a number of factors exacerbating this challenge. Canada's ageing population continues to have a significant impact, and diverse groups such as women and newcomers to Canada are underrepresented in the mining labour force. Our research indicates that women comprise half of Canada's population and about 48% of the labour force, yet in the mining labour force, women represent only 17%. Improving this statistic involves a combination of collaborative solutions, from encouraging young girls to pursue math and science studies, to building a gender-inclusive awareness of the industry, to appointing more women to senior leadership and board positions. This webcast features some of Canada's leading engineering talent, speaking about the challenges they face as women in cutting-edge sectors. Today's presenters lead Leadership Through Diversity in Engineering, a community within the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Victoria, striving to promote equality, acceptance, and inclusion. They will share with us the goals of LTD and the work being done to address pushback at all women events, efforts to be inclusive of trans and gender fluid women being misunderstood, and the complexity of gender inclusion in engineering today. Allow me to take this opportunity to introduce our fantastic panel of guest speakers and have them share a little about themselves and what they do. Stephanie Willerth, the Canadian Research Chair and Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering. Dr. Willerth runs an active research group in the area of neural tissue engineering at the University of Victoria, where she holds dual appointments in the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Division of Medical Sciences as an associate professor. She currently serves as a director for the Centre of Biomedical Research. Her honors include being named a Woman of Innovation in 2017, one of the 2015 Young Innovators in Cellular and Biological Engineering, and a star in global health by Grand Challenges Canada in 2014. Thank you, Stephanie. Tara Stayan, the co-president of Leadership Through Diversity in Engineering, is in her final year of biomedical engineering at the University of Victoria. She joined Leadership Through Diversity 3 years ago. She is passionate about encouraging other women to study engineering and empowering women within the faculty. Her favorite part about studying engineering is working in a research lab with stem cells. She hopes to apply her engineering skills and biological interests in the medical field. Thank you, Tara, for your comments today. Leanne Farmer is also the co-president of the Leadership Through Diversity in Engineering group. And Leanne is in her 4th year of mechanical engineering at the University of Victoria. She has been involved in LTD since first year and has served as the liaison on diversity of the UVic Faculty of Engineering. Leanne's final year will be focused on Engiqueers Canada, fluid dynamics, and a club that is building a human-powered submarine. Great. Now that our listeners have gotten to know each of you a little bit better, can you tell us more about Leadership Through Diversity, how it was established, and some of the key messaging or goals of this initiative? After we hear from each of our presenters, we will welcome any questions or comments from our listeners.
All right, great. Before I hand it over to Dr. Willerth, we would like to acknowledge that we work as visitors on the traditional territory of the Wasonic, Algonquin, and Wyoming nations. All right, Dr. Willerth.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Canadian Institute for Mining, Metallurgy, and Petroleum, as well as Ensemble, the Mining Diversity Network, for hosting us today. It's really exciting to get a chance to talk about some of these issues in recruiting and retaining women in engineering programs. And I'd also like to thank the University of Victoria, our Faculty of Engineering, and our student clubs, especially Leadership Through Diversity, for all their support in helping to promote some of these events. I think it's important to raise awareness of some of these issues, just so we can start to address them and start to recruit and retain not just women, but also more diverse populations in engineering programs. So before we get into Leadership Through Diversity and their work, I was going to just quickly talk a little bit about my perspective on recruiting women and retaining them as a woman professor here in biomedical engineering at the University of Victoria. So to just give you a little bit of background about myself, I grew up outside of Kansas City, Missouri, and one of the things that actually Dr. Mary Wells, who I know has been involved a lot with the Canadian Institute for Mining, Metallurgy, and Petroleum, including we worked together on her Women of Innovation project. One of the things she points out that in Canada has been an issue in getting women into first-year engineering is that they don't take physics in high school. And so by the time they get to university, it's too late unless they want to extend their programs to even get them into engineering. And so the reason I bring that up is because I was reflecting back. And so when I was in high school, I participated in the International Baccalaureate program. And as part of that, I actually took all 3 sciences in high school, and including both advanced placement physics and biology at the higher level as part of my IB program. And so while it wasn't an issue for me personally, I do know that in my advanced science classes and advanced calculus classes in high school, we did have significant gender differences in gender ratio even then, which sort of highlights where we need to start targeting our efforts. And definitely here in Canada, that's something that I know Mary has worked extensively on trying to get the word out that, it's not, it's even just increasing our pool of potential women who could come into engineering to begin with, and showing them that it is a career choice and not to limit themselves. So after that, just to give you an idea of all the different university environments I've been in, which, as I'll go through, have had sort of very different ratios of women to men and different environments, and sort of talk a little bit about those and potentially things we could learn from them. So I went to the Massachusetts Institute for Technology, which is a highly selective school located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They have way more applicants than students they can accept. And so when I went there in 1999 to 2003, the gender ratio was pretty close at the undergraduate level. It was 40-60, and now I believe it is 50-50. And this is one of the things that if Canada really wants to achieve some of their getting 30% of the PNGs to be women by 2030, I think this is something we really need to look into. And I do know that this year, the University of Toronto, I believe, is 50-50 in terms of their entering freshman class. And part of that is by generating enough interest in engineering to get a diverse applicant pool that then you can have both your equal ratios, but also you can recruit a more diverse population, including some of the minorities, which are also historically underrepresented in engineering as well. When I was at MIT, I was a double major in biology and chemical engineering. And in chemical engineering, I think we were similar to the overall population. It was either 30 or 40% women to 60 or 70% men. But I did find it was, when you have a critical mass of women, it was really nice because then you had a diverse number of people to work with and be friends with and just get support from. And so that was an interesting environment. I'd also like to point out that at MIT, we didn't have a medical school, which I found, depending on, that can also influence. Sometimes I feel like if there is potential for some of these more health-related options, you do get more women interested in them. And I'll talk about my experiences with biomedical engineering when we get to my faculty position. After MIT, I knew I wanted to be a professor, so I went on to pursue a PhD at Washington University in St. Louis, which was another private school. And I believe there it was 50-50 men and women at the undergraduate level. In my graduate program itself, the PhD program in biomedical engineering, we were 3 out of 17. And it really fluctuated both with the year and which professors were taking students, the gender ratios. Because I think the year after us, we were closer to 50-50, and then it just really fluctuated based on research interests. Some of the things that I found there that were challenging as a woman grad student, one of the issues in the United States, although not as much of an issue in Canada, and Canada's been very good on addressing this, was just healthcare in general. For example, they cut birth control coverage halfway through my graduate program. And when I called them, they were really, they're like, we've had so few women in engineering, we didn't really consider this to be an issue. And so you can imagine that's not a very welcoming environment. And so that's one of the things that, in terms of having women in higher positions, and in fact, my graduate mentor, who was a woman, who then when she became things like vice dean, she actually did address some of these inequities in healthcare that provided way more support for our women graduate student population. And again, it's one of those things where if you don't have critical mass of women, people just don't notice that these are issues that people are dealing with. From there, I did a postdoctoral fellowship at Berkeley, which is a large public school. There, I was working just in a research lab, so I was less exposed to the undergrad program, and our research lab was very close to 50-50, although we did have more biologists working in our bioengineering group alongside the engineers. And so it's always interesting to see how it sort of changes when you go through these different phases of going through schools where you have not so many women to ones where you have more diversity. And so there it was pretty standard. So it, and Berkeley is a very diverse campus. So there they seem to be really dealing with it quite well. And then in 2010, I started my faculty position here at the University of Victoria, where I'm one of 3 women professors in mechanical engineering. And in general, mechanical engineering tends to be one of the fields which has lower percentages of women. So our faculty, unfortunately, our numbers sort of actually reflect what we're taking at the undergrad level, which in one way it's good. We're not losing through the pipeline, as you see in some of the other disciplines, such as in biology or chemistry. But at the same time, it would be great to have more women in the pipeline at our undergraduate level. So one of the things when I came here and our faculty had this diversity or had surprisingly low numbers of women comparatively to schools across the country, was to start a biomedical engineering program, because these programs tended to attract more women. Here at UVic, when I started, we only had mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, and then some variants like software engineering and computer engineering. And so just starting BME, I think we reached a population of both women and students that were interested more in some science and health-related applications. And I think what was happening before is when we were losing students in first year in other schools that had more diverse faculties of engineering, those students would either be going to chemical, civil, or biomedical. And then here we were just straight losing them to either science or to other schools entirely. And so when we started BME here, we had huge increases in the number of women applying to the University of Victoria and attending. We also then started, the faculty started a civil program a year later. And so both of these programs have actually significantly increased the number of women here. And so we're currently at 17% women in our faculty, and we have about 3,000 students. So we're making progress, and we've hired some more women recently to work in our civil program. So I think here at UVic, we've had a good opportunity to increase our diversity, and increasing the faculty at a level of having more diversity also will help us, I think, recruit a more diverse undergraduate population. Just in general, I think one of the biggest issues when it comes to achieving a diverse population is having the resources to support it, to support searches, to get your top candidates, improving the pipeline, and then making sure that when you do these searches, oftentimes you're very constrained by a specific area when you're hiring a faculty member, to limit it to like a very specific topic, because we're normally trying to fill teaching needs. Whereas they've shown that if you make your job ads very broad, you're more likely to get more women and minorities applying to these diverse job ads. But again, to do that, you need more resources to do these untargeted hires. But hopefully those are some of our goals for the future. And so that's sort of my perspective from being a professor who's gone through the whole system all the way through, and sort of some of the bottlenecks and issues you can see. And then I think because of some of these issues and how they've been dealt with at UVic, we, was it in 2010, Leadership Through Diversity was founded? 2012. Yeah, so the students founded an organization called Leadership Through Diversity, which was also from a student perspective to help address some of these issues. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tara and Leanne to talk about their experiences. Great. Oh, and we should have actually advanced our slide. Sorry. There is my slide showing all of my history of what I was doing in a variety of settings, both public and private. Yeah, just in general, I found that private schools did have more resources to address some of these diversity needs, and in a more immediate way than at some of the public institutions like at UVic or Berkeley. So that, well.
Thanks, Dr. Willer. I'm Tara.
I'm Leanne.
So that you can tell our voices apart. So we're going to be talking about the club Leadership Through Diversity, which is a student-run club at the University of Victoria. The club started in January 2012, and it was founded by Tiffany Yu. And it was started to address some of the inclusivity issues that were going on with events that were already being run at the University of Victoria in the engineering department. And so the group was inspired by existing women in engineering groups across Canada. And the club tried to embody the support and involvement that they provided minority groups. But instead of focusing on just women in engineering, the club decided to focus on diversity, so that inclusivity was a main component of the club. And basically this was just so that all minorities felt welcome at our events. And our club also works very closely with the Engineering Student Society.
Yeah, so some of the ways that we support minorities is to run mixers such as our women/gender minorities in engineering mixer and our LGBTQ mixer. So these are important because it can often be hard for minorities to find people like them in their classes and to form their own support groups. So past events that we run, we usually try to make them really fun. So we've done kickboxing, board game nights, cupcake decorating, and we also recruit a lot of the members of these minority groups, and they help us plan future events and get really excited about it. Recently, within the past year, we've also become a chapter of Queers Canada, which is a national organization of student groups that support the LGBTQ+ engineering students across Canada. The organization was started by Vanessa Ramponi, a student at McMaster University, and which offers support and mentorship to student groups wishing to be more inclusive of the LGBTQ+ community. So this is an organization that began within the past 2 years and has really started to take off. There's more than 20 membership organizations now at 20 different universities, and you can look forward in the future, they're going to start expanding to work with professional engineers and just people in industry as well. So it's pretty exciting.
In addition to that, our club has a couple of long-term initiatives that we've been pursuing for the past year and a half, I would say. And these are kind of behind the scenes type of goals that we work on that maybe don't involve as many events with students, but they're things that the club thinks are very important to us.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that we've learned about from talking with other women and other minorities is that a lot of people experience uncomfortable situations or unsafe situations while on co-op, so while on internships. So co-op students are vulnerable in the workplace because they're temporary employees and they need to complete a work term for credit, and they're inexperienced in the workforce. So predators or other coworkers tend to be aware of this vulnerability and take advantage of it. And Many students we spoke with specifically said that they didn't tell anyone they were being harassed at work because they didn't know what is and isn't allowed, or they didn't want to rock the boat, and they want to get a good recommendation for the end of the co-op. So we've been working with the Equity and Human Rights Office as well as the co-op office to understand this issue more and to put more resources out there so that students know what is and does not constitute inappropriate behavior and are more confident about speaking up about it. Yeah.
And that's an initiative that we're really excited about. It seems like every student we talk to shares another experience with us and is really excited that it's something that we are pursuing in conjunction with the department. Another initiative that we decided to tackle last year was to provide free menstrual hygiene products in the engineering buildings on campus. And so we did this last year and collaborated with the Engineering Student Society. And initially we were buying them, and then we found some other sources of funding. So it's an ongoing thing that still exists in the buildings. And we organized a little display to go with the menstrual hygiene products in the washrooms and monitored them with the Engineering Student Society. And we actually included our email on the display cards out front so that people could give us feedback. And we got super positive feedback on it. So I'm just going to read a couple of the quotes from students that were sent to us. One says, "Hey, you saved my life. Thanks for the tampon. Would love to see them in more bathrooms around campus." Another student said, "I just wanted to say I am so happy seeing the free tampons and pads in the engineering and computer science building. Please continue to provide them. It's a lifesaver." And then another one, which was interesting, was, "I am a male UVic mechanical engineering student, and I think it's crazy that tampons and pads aren't already free. It's as basic as anything else, and they are a must-have item. I fully support this project." So we were really excited about that. That was the exact type of feedback that we were hoping to get. And then in addition to that, we just had a lot of female students approach us and say that they felt a lot more welcome and included in the buildings because these products were being provided for free in the engineering buildings, and they're not provided for free in a lot of the other buildings on campus. So that was really exciting.
Yeah.
Can I have a point of order, just in case you guys know? Is there a reason why? I just want to point out, because the lack of feminine hygiene products is not just exclusive to our engineering building, which is what I thought it was when I first talked about this issue, but I know it's also an issue in other buildings across campus. And I just was wondering if that's a Canadian thing or if that's just a UVic thing.
I think it's a Canadian thing, but I don't think it's required. I just heard that 2 states in the US, I'm not sure, but they're going to start, all the colleges in these 2 states are going to start providing menstrual hygiene products for free. But you know, it's a process.
Right. Oh, I mean, not even just for free. I meant in the States, usually they're just, you can buy them. And then here it was just like, I actually thought it was an engineering discriminatory thing. And then I realized it was just no building. So
yeah, at UVic, you can't even buy them in a lot of the buildings on campus. So it's really important to provide them here.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been a fun project. All right. Okay, we also run a ton of other events throughout the semester. We try to include the whole engineering population in these events. So we have open events and etc.
So one of my favorite types of events that we host are discussion-based events, and these are open to any students in the engineering faculty. Sometimes we have a couple people outside of the faculty attend, which is exciting because we get different perspectives. One of the recent ones that we had was a language of sexuality event, which was an informational event about the language used within the LGBTQ+ community, just so that engineering students could be more inclusive with the language that they were using when they were talking to people. Another one that we've had was a discussion about masculinity within the engineering department. And also, we like to host a guest speaker every semester or every second semester. So we were really excited and honored recently to have Lynn Conway come and speak with the students at the university. Not only is she an incredibly accomplished engineer that had an amazing career and worked with IBM a ton, she is also a transgender activist, and she spoke with us about the discrimination that she endured through her career and how she personally persevered. and advice for us on how to succeed in our careers and how to handle some of the things that she also experienced.
Yeah. Another thing we do pretty much every semester is to host potlucks during the long weekends that are traditionally like Thanksgiving weekend or another holiday weekend. And we specifically try to invite international students. We work with the International Student Society and just have a big dinner because maybe they probably wouldn't be able to go home over the long weekend. And it's a great way to meet people and share food. Yeah. One of the most exciting things we've done in the past year is to march in the Vancouver Pride Parade with Queers chapters from Vancouver, and which was so much fun. The energy in the crowd was amazing, and seeing people really excited about engineers marching was incredible. It was a great opportunity to reframe how many people view our industry and maybe dissuade some harmful stereotypes. Yeah, so we have encountered difficulties with people misunderstanding the purpose of the club. Sometimes they think we only support women because we do a lot of things for women. So we've made an effort to be more communicative about our inclusiveness and have increased the number of open mixers, which we specifically advertise as open mixers, and recently having introduced the LGBTQ+ mixer.
And then in addition to that, we also normally host an information meeting in September, which is the first month back to school for everybody. And in those meetings, we kind of just talk about what diversity is and why it's important in engineering and how our club relates to that. And so those events are generally for students that don't know very much about the club and don't understand why it is important. We normally get a good turnout to these, but ideally we would like to be talking to a larger amount of the student population, maybe the first year students, just so that right off the bat, they understand why diversity is important and why UVic wants to support a diverse population in the engineering faculty.
Mm-hmm. Another way that we've been increasing discussions about diversity is we hosted a diversity trivia night in the summer, which was really fun. It was just a trivia night, but all the questions were on issues relating to diversity. We also have moved from calling the Women in Engineering mixer to also calling it the Gender Minority mixer to be more inclusive of trans and gender fluid women. We run the Gender Minority mixer because even though gender minorities do not all have the same experience in engineering, but they deal with a lot of the same issues. Even though the definition of diversity absolutely includes male engineers, diversity cannot be accomplished with the current rates of women dropping out of the industry due to these shared issues. What LTD is attempting to accomplish is to support diversity in engineering by providing women with a natural support network, enabling them to remain comfortably in engineering among the majority for the long term.
So LTD has a couple of goals that we want to pursue in the future. So we want to continue focusing even more on diversity and on inclusion. And we would also like to pursue a mandatory co-op seminar for the first year students. So that was the co-op rights seminar that we were talking about. We would ideally like to work with the faculty to get that incorporated in the first year curriculum somehow, just so that these students know what their rights are before they're in the workplace, so that they're empowered to stand up for themselves.
In addition, there's so many other issues faced by engineering students and minorities that need to be addressed. For example, mental health is a huge issue in engineering students, as well as discrimination and lack of support for those with differing mental abilities or with mental illnesses. So we plan on raising more awareness for mental health issues within the engineering community, which is often not touched by campus-wide awareness initiatives.
Yeah, so with that, we're gonna pass it back to Dr. Willard.
Okay, well, thank you. That was great. So yeah, as you can see here at the University of Victoria, we are working very hard to try and increase our diversity through a variety of methods, both at the faculty and student levels. And with that, would be happy to take any questions. So if the moderator wants to let us know how that works, we're here and we're ready to answer.
Thanks so much for all of that great information, not only sharing your own experiences, but some of the great work that the Leadership Through Diversity group is doing. I really liked how through that group you're not just focusing on one type of activity or that type of thing. You're very diverse, actually, and how you're bringing people together and opening doors and making sure that there's lots of ways to connect. And I also really liked hearing the different innovative ways about getting your messages out and that type of thing as well. So that's great. Let's definitely open the floor now to questions. If you have a question, you can put it through the chat box in the corner of your screen, and we will be looking at questions as they come in and trying to share as much as we can over the time that we have for questions. Right now, I'll just kick it off as we see some questions come in. Share a little bit more about your own personal experiences or individual success stories. You shared a bit of that in some of the examples that you gave, but if there's any more that you can share around your own personal experiences working with the Leadership Through Diversity program and having it become a reality.
Okay. Well, one of the ways in which I've personally experienced the benefit was that, well, Tara and I met at a Women in Engineering event in first year, as well as a couple other of our women friends in first year. And that support group was critical for those early years, and obviously still is. We still rely on each other a lot. And yeah, LTD has just been an extension of that for me and for us. Like, everyone we meet, through it, we get a chance to, yeah, have some support. And
yeah, I definitely think that's one of the things that I have also enjoyed a lot about the club is we're all working together to reach similar goals. And then through that, you actually end up making a lot of friends outside of the club, through the club, which has been really fun.
One thing I think, just as a faculty member, when we had Dr. Mary Wells out here last spring, I was really surprised, I should say pleasantly surprised, that actually a number of our male students, including those in leadership positions in the Engineering Student Society, came out. And a number of those members of the executive have told me that they do think it's important to have more diversity. And partially, I think it's because we, and I can totally admit, we started definitely even when I showed up in 2010 from a very bad gender ratio, and working more towards having more women and more minorities in general helps to normalize their presence. And also, I think just in general, if you have an organization, and you'll see this a lot in the Silicon Valley, where you have very few women and very few minorities, it's a canary in the coal mine that that's probably not a good organization if you're actively driving these people off. And if you have a diverse set of perspectives and your organization welcomes those, and then you will become diverse. It'll grow on itself. And so in that sense, I think if you have a more diverse faculty of engineering or even a more diverse company, it's going to lead to better outcomes. Well, and they've shown in the business world that leads to better outcomes, more profit and things like that, just because you're taking into account a wider variety of perspectives. And I think one of the things in engineering is traditionally characterized, as being a very hard slog, very difficult, and things like that. And so I think everyone's having a tough time, and just if you can increase perspectives and try and make that easier, it can help everyone in the end.
Yeah,
so.
That's definitely something that we've noticed, as well as that the Engineering Student Society has been not only cooperative, but very excited about a lot of the recent things that we have been working on. And it was actually a male student in the Engineering Student Society that first suggested providing free menstrual hygiene products in the engineering building. So we were really excited about that.
Yeah, LTD has recently become a lot more mainstream. I feel like when I joined 4 years ago, there was 5 of us and we sat around like a tiny table, and now there's 15 of us each semester. And yeah, we collaborate with a lot more people. And yeah, it seems to come along with a cultural change within our faculty of students, for sure.
That's great. Thanks a lot for that additional information. And as we talk about who's participating in the group, it is a student club, as you mentioned, but in the events that you have and some of the work that you're doing, how do you see a lot of staff or employees also participating, or is it just really student focused as far as participation?
Well, today we have, members from the co-op office here, listening to our presentation, which is amazing. Yeah, we would love to get faculty more involved in awareness initiatives in general, I think, but we've had great support from them.
Yeah, as well, for instance, us being here today is because Dr. Willerth reached out to us and asked us if we would like to speak with her. So that was really exciting. So yeah, there's a lot of faculty, I think, that support us and the initiatives that we're pursuing.
Yeah, that definitely the engineering undergraduate office we've promoted this to the whole faculty, and they're very supportive of increasing diversity. Also, LTD, I believe, has, at least in years past, they've gone around to the department meetings and brought some of these issues up. And I know, at least in mechanical, my colleagues have become more aware of some of the issues where women have been pushed out of doing labs, not allowed to do some of the real design and things like that. And they've become more sensitive to some of these things and some of these events. And I know with some of our previous, what was it called? Frosh.
Yes.
The school has definitely moved towards trying to be more sensitive and to run these events in a manner that is less or more inclusive. Because one of the things that I think we used to find was that this sort of drove off some of our diverse populations when we had a very, I don't know how you would describe Frosh, but did not contribute to diversity. And I think that that's one thing that, again, having role models and things can change, is if you can show that we have women in leadership positions. For example, I was the center director, and we also recently established a Women in Science group here at UVic, and they had a symposium recently that was quite successful. Having Dr. Mary Wells come, I know the Dean of Engineering actually attended Dr. Mary Wells and her talk. So her talk was actually, we completely filled the room. It was great, which shows, I think, that there is a demand for events like that just hadn't been organized previously. And I think Leadership Through Diversity is really helping to fulfill some of that. And we're also trying to work more with W West, which is run by Leslie Shannon out of SFU, even though she's over on the mainland, that trying to get some better integration, I think, with her group is good as well.
Great. Thanks so much for that information. We have another question, and this is a bit around what Dr. Willerth, you talked about, attracting more girls to STEM in high school and that type of thing. We have a question around how we can better attract, not just at high school, but at that middle school level, where maybe it's more of a key decision point in deciding to take those STEM courses that you need. Does the university is doing some work around that area? Does the club do anything to reach out just beyond the students that have made the decision and are in the university program already, but to kind of look downstream as well, down into the high school and middle school groups, to get the message out that there's great opportunities at university, and that it's becoming a more diverse program, and that there's lots of welcoming things that you'll find if you choose to go down the road of more of a STEM career and take a STEM course.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing over the past couple of years is running workshops for whoever will take us, basically. So we have contacts at elementary schools. I think we've done 2 elementary school workshops in the past 2 years, maybe 3. And we also did a workshop it's called the Choices Conference here, which is a conference for girls in middle school who are, trying to decide on a career. So we had them set up some circuits and make a shoebox projector type thing. We also did a workshop for at a summer camp for Indigenous high school students here, which was really fun. We had them building bridges and testing them out and breaking them. So yeah, we found that's been really important and very rewarding, just sharing how, you know, anyone can be an engineer as long as you're passionate about the material. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I speak at high schools as well all the time. I think actually, again, going back to what Mary Wellesley presented last year, and if anyone's interested, you should contact her and get a copy of her presentation on the leaky pipeline because it's amazing. But she also mentioned that one of the big issues that they found in Ontario, and I'm sure it's an issue here too, was the physics teachers and the quality of physics education wasn't very good. And so it wasn't even that potentially women weren't interested, it was just that it was presented so poorly that it turned them off. And so I think in Ontario, they did some targeting where they were retraining physics teachers to be more accessible, and then that really helped their numbers as well. And so that's one of the issues, especially if you're trying to reach some of these students who are in public high schools and things, is making sure that your STEM teachers are supported and are being able to reach these diverse populations. I know even my male colleagues who have their daughters in school now will like the things that they hear from their math teachers to discourage them, and then they tell the daughters they can do whatever they want, and then they go to their math teacher, and the math teacher's like, oh, you don't need to worry about math because like that's not your thing. And so I think that's one of the areas too where like looking at potential teacher training and sensitivity in those areas and not feeding into some of these existing stereotypes, and where you can really start to address some of this.
Mm-hmm. And as well, last year, I actually also work in Dr. Willer's research lab, and last year I mentored a high school student who was interested in going into engineering. So she would meet with me once a week, and I would kind of teach her different wet lab techniques and different things that you could do in biomedical engineering. And she would ask me about school and what I liked and what I didn't like. So it was kind of an informal mentoring process. And she's actually taking engineering at UVic now.
Oh yeah, one other thing. I was just going to mention, while I was, so for those of you, the Canadian Foundation for Innovation pays for a lot of the infrastructure that's in research labs like my own, and they are partnering with, I believe it's Girl Guides, to get young women who are in that middle school range, to take them into research labs and have them look at all this infrastructure so they can actually get a real idea of what you do in a lab. And so I think that's one of the issues that engineering faces just in terms of marketing, is that in high school you don't take an engineering class. And in fact, even in second year, I'll teach mechanicals and they'll be in engineering, but they won't know what engineering is. And so I think one of the other things is just marketing of engineering and telling girls what it is. Because a lot of times, as I think I told this story in the book that Mary Wells put together, you know, I'll have dads who will just bring me their sons and they'll be like, he needs to be an engineer. But I've never had a mom bring me her daughter and tell me she has to be an engineer. And the son's just like, oh, I'm going to be an engineer. And then, you know, he figures it out about 3.5 years into his program. Whereas, yeah. And so I think that's one of the things, is just defining what engineering is and showing positive role models.
That's great. And you talked a little bit also about how you're working with the co-op office and kind of raising awareness about diversity and, you know, safety on the job and all that kind of thing through the co-op placements. What else do you think now, you know, once we're attracting more women into the programs, at the other end is looking at employment and those opportunities? How do you think employers in mining can support what your club is doing and maybe connect with the club as well to help make that connection for work down the road and making their own work environments more diverse by, you know, attracting engineering talent that is diverse as well?
Yeah, I think one of the ways to do that is to connect with organizations that are already out there. For example, ENGIE-Careers Canada is like developing such a great like nationwide organization, and they will hopefully spread into the workforce later. So like if an employer wanted to like reach out to them, or I know that she's the president of ENGIE-Careers Canada is speaking at a lot of conferences now. I think the way for companies to be more inclusive is to reach out to these young innovators who are doing like such incredible things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think some of the mining companies did work with UBC, and they are working currently on some of these women in engineering chairs. Some of it is just, my little brother, well, I'm a chemical engineer. He's also a chemical engineer, but some of the stuff with the oil industry and things, some of the jobs, just being away from home for months on end, just don't really lend themselves as readily to things. And so I know when he worked at Schlumberger, one of the things they did was specifically to retain women, because they were losing so many of them, was to offer them jobs where they'd only be in the field half the time, as opposed to when, like, my brother was in the field like 320 days out of the year. And I think just making jobs, again, overall, it's not like male engineers are like, I want to be miserable, hate women, and work 60 hours a week. Everyone would actually like work-life balance and to see their kids. And so I think that that's one of the things, is by making some of these jobs a bit, not just more family friendly, but just work-life balance friendly. And I think when you have some of your organizations working with students at undergrad level and looking at these diverse viewpoints, and they can figure out ways of integrating these in, obviously working with the women and the INSERC Women in Science and Engineering chairs is key. Here in BC, we're trying to network across all 3 campuses to try and get some more diversity. Yvonne Cody, who's in computer science here, I know she's done a lot of work with Indigenous populations to try and increase coding and proficiency, and just trying to understand some of those. And I think, so I think that's pretty much some of the ways they can connect. And if anybody out there wants to be connected with the appropriate people here at the University of Victoria, obviously you can reach out to me. My email is just willerth, my last name, @uvic.ca. So
yeah, and then as well, I think it's a type of thing that snowballs. So if you have one female co-op student go and work for your company and they have a positive experience and they come back and tell their friends about it, then those friends are more likely to apply for that co-op in subsequent semesters. I actually just had a friend who did a fly-in, fly-out co-op job up north and really enjoyed it. And so I think that kind of made a lot of other students see that they could do it as well if they're interested in it. And also, in addition, our email address is ltd.uvic@gmail.com if you wanted to send us an email.
Oh, just for that. So what is it better to look up your Facebook or your other website?
Probably Facebook if you want to get in touch with us. We update it a little bit more often. Yeah.
So they're on Facebook. I have a lab website, but I'm also active on Twitter. So I'm Dr. Willerth on Twitter if you want to follow me there. But those are pretty much the easiest ways to contact us.
That's great, and thanks so much for sharing your contact information. We will definitely send that information out to the webinar attendees after the webinar as well, so that if they didn't catch it, they'll definitely have a way to access it and connect with you after the webinar as well. I have another question around the club itself and all the great work that you're doing, and you've been at the school for a little while, and probably potentially coming to the end of your education. What type of succession planning for leadership within the club are you putting in place to ensure that all the great work that you've been doing while you're there will continue after you graduate?
Well, we have such an incredible group working with us right now, and I guess a lot of us are graduating, but the people who are staying, we're very confident in them, and especially with the work we've been doing with Educators Canada, we've been attracting people who are really passionate about that as well. So there's just so many different avenues it can go down. Yeah, it's been fun, but I'm sure that the people who come after us will do a better job than us.
And we have students, I think, in every year in our club. So we have first year students, second year students, third year students, and generally as the years go on, students tend to get more involved. So I think we are the 3rd or 4th iteration of presidents of the club, something like that. So it just gets passed down kind of on to the next person who's super enthusiastic about the club.
Yeah, and we have 5 or 6 years of meeting minutes that are all there, and they're easy to reference for people to go back and be like, oh, how did they do this? How did they plan that? Like, what context do we have in this industry? Or here.
Oh, and I'd also point out, just for those of you who don't know, engineering at the University of Victoria is mandatory co-op. So with a lot of our student clubs and executives, they are used to switching presidents every other term, because technically if students are following their program, they're on co-op every other semester. And so that's something that our student teams and governments have actually learned to deal with, is having multiple leaders per cycle, just due to the co-op nature. Although I know, right, it also poses challenges when you're doing clubs, because you don't have people there continuously all year.
Yeah, it can be hard switching off presidents every semester, but luckily I'm very off schedule, so so I'll be here for 3 semesters in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. If anyone else, if there's any other questions, we're almost out of time, so, but we do have time for maybe 1 or 2 more. If you have any questions, please do use your chat box on the right-hand corner of your screen so that you can put those questions forward. That's great. Maybe in the meantime, there's another question that's come in. Just looking at some advice, I guess, if you are in an engineering school that may not have this amount, either any action at this point or any formalized club, what would be your advice on getting started?
Well, hopefully, I know this isn't always the case in engineering schools, but hopefully your engineering student society may be willing to help you out. So I know in some schools they'll have a diversity coordinator who will plan events like this, maybe women in engineering events. So maybe if they're friendly and like open to that kind of thing, you could offer to work with them on diversity initiatives. Do you have any? Yeah.
Also, I would just recommend reaching out to any professors that you see as a mentor, reaching out to any industry members that you know, or even your friends, because I think that was a similar situation that Tiffany found herself in, and she took the initiative to kind of figure out how to start a club and how to make it all work.
Yeah, if you wanted to start a club, you should totally go for it. Yeah, it's helped a lot.
And also approach, because you guys also are supported by the actual overall UVic student society as well.
Yes.
And so definitely approach both your school's student society, your engineering society. And I'd also suggest in most cases approaching the VPAC, because essentially, I guess except maybe Toronto now, we'll see how theirs progresses. But I know this is an issue for a lot of the VPACs, is getting more diversity and things like that. And sometimes it gets lost in translation as it goes down through the deans. But we have an equity person here, Grace Wonstedden, who's been very good at helping try and address some of these diversity issues, both at the faculty level and student level. And so there you can also often find allies.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It looks like we have come to an end of the Q&A period. I really want to thank everyone for your questions and comments, and thank you to our presenters, Dr. Willerth, Tara Stayan, and Leanne Farmer. Your information and sharing of your experiences and insights has been extremely interesting and very helpful, I think, for everyone participating and those participants in the Ensemble Network. If you have any further questions or concerns that weren't answered in today's webcast, don't hesitate to start the conversation on Ensemble or contact me directly. And we encourage you to please stay connected. A recording of today's webinar will be available on the Ensemble site within a few days, and I invite you to review the monthly blog post as well. So this concludes our Ensemble webcast. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and join us next month for our next Ensemble webinar. Goodbye.